We are, sorry about that.
There we go.
Oh, that's why it's not working. Okay, I see we have a parent online this evening. Would you like to speak tonight?
She's connecting to audio. She's muted herself.
You might have to repeat it though, because it was on audio
Okay.
before.
We have a parent online this evening. Would you like to speak tonight?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, let me go over the ground rules, please. The board may permit any individual or group to address the board concerning any subject that lies within its jurisdiction, except as noted below, during a portion of the board's regular or special meeting so designated on the agenda for such purpose. The Board of Education does not respond to specific questions during the course of public address, although a topic may be formally added to a board meeting agenda at a later time. The superintendent of schools may respond or clarify a specific question or issue at the meeting or subsequent to the meeting, or the board chairman may respond on behalf of the Board of Education. All speakers must identify themselves by name and address. 3 minutes may be allotted for each speaker and a maximum of 30 minutes to each subject matter. The board may modify these limitations at the beginning of a meeting if the number of persons wishing to speak makes it advisable to do so. A board member shall be appointed by the chairperson prior to the meeting to act as timekeeper for the meeting if deemed necessary by the chairperson. No boisterous conduct shall be permitted at any board meeting. Persistence in boisterous conduct shall be grounds for summary termination by the chairperson of that person's privilege of address. Speakers are required to refrain from presentations that discuss specific employees of the Board of Education, regardless of whether or not the employee is identified in the presentation by name or by another reference that tends to identify an individual. Members of the public are encouraged to submit commendations, comments, charges, or complaints concerning specific employees to an appropriate administrator and or to the Board of Education under provisions of Board of Education policy.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Lisa.
Oh, so it's up to me now? Oh, hi guys. So I'm a mom. I can't see you guys right now. But I have been concerned about the lack of transparency in the district about the rules concerning boys and girls spaces. And I think that this is an issue that needs to be addressed against, for all the schools, the high school, the middle school, and the middle school, and the elementary school. I do believe that I have asked the district for transparency regarding the new laws around this issue to be a little bit more transparent than they have been. And I know that there have been girls that have been in locker rooms and that have felt uncomfortable. And I want to make sure that everybody has a space that they feel comfortable in our district. And I realize that this is a touchy subject, but I want to know, what are you doing to be transparent to parents? And how are you responding to parents that have addressed this topic? Because I have emails admin about this, and I've been told that this is not affecting me, but it will affect me and affect my kids in 2 years when they move up to the high school. I am consenting to give my children spaces with their biological sex, but I'm not consenting to give them spaces without the biological sense. And I think putting that burden on 14-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 8-year-olds to speak up is just not right. And it needs to be communicated to parents what the expectation is. So I want to really know, what is the district doing to be transparent with this issue? And that's basically my concern. It's just the lack of the transparency. I want to have a conversation about this topic, because it is a hard topic, and I think that we all need to, talk about it and not keep it in the shadows any longer.
Okay, thank you, Listen, for bringing this to our attention.
Mhm.
Appreciate your time. Okay, we will follow up with you.
That sounds great. Thank you.
You. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, correspondence. Oh, actually, I apologize. Reports from our student board reps. Okay.
Hi. It's been a long time since I've seen you guys. I missed you. Okay, so I'll be starting with clubs and academics. So our first club was the Encountering Survivors Club, which Ms. Barros has started this year, I believe. And it's about communicating with Holocaust victims and kind of hearing their stories and getting their side of things. So these survivors went to New York City on a field trip. They went to see the Holocaust Museum and they went to tour a synagogue. Another New York City field trip that I learned about after we had submitted this report was with the Black and Latino Studies class. They also went to New York City on the same day, actually, which was very interesting. Quiz Bowl won their meet.
Wow.
Very proud of them. And then NHS had they had a cleaning products drive, like a hygiene products for their like monthly fundraiser. So then for academics, our juniors just took their SATs. Thank God they're over. So the questions for this year's SATs were adjusted based on your performance in the first section. So your second section was either the harder section or the easier section based on how you did in the first section. And that gave students a little bit of idea of how they performed on the SATs, because you could kind of gauge whether you got the hard section, the easy section, but also these questions were a lot harder than they had been in years past, and students felt very unprepared coming into it. But we should be receiving our scores back soon. That'll be great. We had a pajama day to raise money for Ukrainian refugees as someone's capstone. That was great. And then finally, Mr. Rosenheim, who was a teacher at OSHS last year, he taught earth science, is now back at OSHS teaching biology, and students are very, very excited to have that.
And for extracurriculars, there's a tech give back with Miss Dion, the Rotary Club, and Hannah DePuma, and I believe she's doing this as her capstone. And this is taking place on April 20th in front of the high school. And then, very exciting, I believe the student government decided to officially name March 14th as Jan Ferruccio Day, and we had an amazing ceremony for her. It was really nice. The chorus kids sang. It was really
praise.
Oh yeah, we
It's
had
pretty crazy.
sticks with our face on it.
Oh, yeah.
It was a test.
And then for sports, there's a group of sophomore girls who are looking to create a volleyball club. And this would be to generate interest in volleyball and then hopefully to make it into a sport, because I believe if you have a club for any sport, has to be a club for 2 years before it can officially be a sport. So they're trying to do this so that they can eventually create it into a sport. And then the girls field hockey team is losing a lot of players, and they're concerned because since the middle school team has been canceled, since they haven't had enough players, it's decreasing the amount of students who are interested and who are being funneled in from the middle school to the high school. So it's really decreasing participation. And the team is worried about their future as a team. But for the current sports season, softball has a current record of 1-2. They won their scrimmage against Valley and they won against Eli Whitney, and then they lost against HK and Hillray. We also just had an amazing win, 20-3 against Valley today, about 2 hours ago. And girls track had their first scrimmage canceled for weather, but they had a meet at Daniel
It
Ham.
was actually East. Sorry.
East Hampton
It got moved late last minute.
on the 6th, yeah.
Yeah.
And then today, I meet at Lionel Black.
Which number?
And then boys track was at the same meets. Baseball lost against HK. Boys lacrosse is having a really good season so far. They tied Dayton Academy in the scrimmage and they won against North Branford, but currently, as of right now, I believe they have a record of 5-1. So they're doing really well. Girls lacrosse beat Montville in their first scrimmage and won against Morgan. And they have also been expressing concerns of not having enough players. A lot of people have been either choosing not to do a sport or moving to other sports from lacrosse. So they have a big seat. They can barely field a varsity team. For crew, they had a fundraiser, which was a car wash, and they raised a lot of money. It was very successful. And then some students and crew were expressing concerns about having trouble with transportation to and from the school because they don't have a bus. So they were saying that it makes it really difficult for them to get to and from practices sometimes. And yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you. We have questions for our board reps.
Question for Krista. Sometimes Jan would give us opportunity to sit in on the capstone, but I don't know when they're gonna be.
Joe might be able to answer.
We're having our capstone presentation on Thursday, so that's when all of the students will be given the information on the next steps to make their presentations for the capstones. So those should be being finalized and presented probably soon, I'd say in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Right,
So
so
maybe Joe can give this stuff.
I'm sure Joe won't mind.
Thank you so much. Karen, correspondence?
Yeah, we have one piece of correspondence this evening, and it is from Jan Crucio, to all of us on the Board of Education, thanking us all for the celebration we gave her a couple of weeks ago. So I'm just gonna pass that around. Thank you, that's it.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
Okay, next item is our meeting minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes, please. The second by Elaine. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay, moving on, we have a donation for our student field trips and athletic equipment.
Yes, okay, so we had a donation of $1,000 made by our selectman Matthew Puglisi. He wanted to make this donation to be shared between the student activity accounts for all 3 schools to pay for athletic equipment and field trips for students that may be in need. Under our policy, over $500, any donation needs to be approved by the superintendent and shared with all of you, so no action needs to be taken. But I did want to make you aware of this very kind and thoughtful donation to our schools.
Great, thank you. Moving on, we have a donation for the Old Civic High School prom.
Okay, so in addition to that, we have another donation. It was actually a 3-part donation. $1,000 was donated by Chrysler Dodge Shoreline Chrysler Dodge, another $1,000 by Shoreline Hyundai, and Hauser Public Safety and Executive 911 has donated $630, and the money is to be used for offsetting the cost of the prom at the high school. So very nice as well. So again, I'm notifying you of this donation.
Great.
Yes.
I just had a question. Were those donations solicited or were they just kind of a surprise?
That's my question. Joe, do you know the answer to that?
I don't think they were solicited, but I can find out for sure from the advisors.
So is that it seems like an unusual thing. Is that something that we've had before? Donation of food
I think so.
Oh,
I'm curious to know.
Just interested in
yeah.
how that just landed in our laps. So that's awesome. Great job fundraising.
And do we know like how that will impact ticket pricing or?
Again, Jill may know the answer to that. Not sure if they've,
I can get the details from the advisors because it is new. We do make every effort to help students who may need financial help. We don't want money to ever be, an obstacle for our students. So anything we can do, it may come in the form of ticket rebates. But let me find out for you.
Thank you. So moving on, we have a healthy food certification.
Just one more
I'm sorry,
question.
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't realize that we were transitioning to something else. But do we send is there a thank you
Yes,
process?
we
I
have-
would imagine, right?
yes, actually, we have thank you letters ready to go.
But, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we absolutely will thank them.
Healthy food certification.
Okay, so our healthy food certification is something that we do every year. It's a way that we get additional funding for our food services. So I'm gonna let Pam talk a little bit more just about this certification process, but it's something that you've heard every year and that we've done every year.
Okay, so it's a very boilerplate kind of approval. It's prescribed by the state. In order to participate, the language has to be exactly as it is. So the motion is prescribed. What the healthy food certification is that the district is promising that food outside of our meal program will meet certain guidelines in order to give a better nutritional component, an example, lead by example for our students, for other things that are going on within our schools during the day and our after-school activities. So as part of the healthy food certification, we're saying we promise to abide by these guidelines, that during the school day and within a certain period after the end of the school day, that we will make sure that we have compliant food is going to be what's going to be available to our students. So if it were a compliant beverage, it means it's 100% juice, no added sugar. Milks are limited in sugar. There's not soda available. It wouldn't be coffee. That's not considered a high value nutrition beverage. And the same thing would go for snack foods. They have to meet certain guidelines for healthier choices for our students, not only for the meals that are provided under the USDA program, but outside. And encouragement to follow those guidelines is that there is an offer up to 10 cents per meal served. So I'm telling you, it's not related to the meals, but the way they reimburse us is based on the meals that we serve, because there has to be some way for them to, quantify our value of getting some additional funding. So over the past number of years, I included in the memo where we're at. We're well over $100,000 that we have received back from the state for agreeing to make sure that items outside the meal program and during specified times meet their criteria, which is in benefit to our students and leading by example for more nutritional value. So with that being said, they do give us an opportunity to make an exception for very certain events, specific events. So if we had a basketball game and we were going to sell concessions, if you approve the healthy food certification with the exemption, that allows us to sell concessions at very specific events. So they define what an event is. It's not practices every day. It has to be a game, a musical specifically. It still has to be within certain time periods. But for those specified events, the rules are lifted. You can sell candy, you can sell soda, and those kind of things. So that's what's before you for this first motion, is whether you agree to continue participating in the Healthy Foods program, agree to receiving additional funding, and allow exemptions so that for specific events that meet their definition, we can work.
The motion on the table, and then we have discussion. Make a motion to approve the healthy food certification as presented.
Second. Steve? Questions or? Rena?
Yeah, we've kind of been waiting for this presentation for a while. So while we have voted to comply with this in previous years, we have also voted not to increase the cost of lunches because we have a lot of concerns about kids not buying lunches, throwing lunches away. What I'd be interested in before I can vote to support this is there are a number of schools who have outsourced their lunch programs, like the Chartwells, et cetera.
Mhm.
And I'd be interested in getting information from, have their lunch purchases increased? Is there more of a participation from students as a result of that? And because for me, I think you had sent us some information earlier in the year that like over the 3 schools, like there's, I can't remember the number of students of lunches that are sold. But I just think that we become beholden to this and then we have to create meals that are in support of it. And I think that by considering potentially other options, we may actually enable students to have greater participation and avail themselves of maybe some more delicious meals. So I don't know if we have any access to that kind of information.
Okay, so let me clarify. The healthy foods participation that we're talking about has nothing to do with lunch or breakfast. Those meals
Really?
are regulated by the USDA and the National Food Program. So that's prescribed. The nutritional value, the salt allowed, the portion size, all of that is the National USDA meal program. Completely separate from the healthy foods. Healthy Foods is committing to providing a better opportunity for snacks and a la carte things outside of the meal
Outside of the
program.
meal.
So it's strictly outside of the meal program. That if we have a vending machine with snacks in it, those snacks have to be a
Right.
certain quality.
Yeah.
So it's the outside
So
stuff, so it's
completely
completely
outside. Thanks for
separate.
that clarification.
Yeah, it's just, unfortunately, it gets a little muddied because they pay us based on meals. But it has nothing to do with the meals. It's just the only way they have to be able to quantify an incentive for us. For offering whatever's outside of the meal program to be healthier for our students.
Which is interesting that they say juices because that's 100% sugar, right? That's just a comment.
No, I understand. It's not added
Right,
sugar,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, no,
And
okay, but thanks
it's
for that
also only,
clarification.
it's also only certain juices.
Yeah.
So it's very
Prescriptive.
prescriptive,
Yeah.
even within that, it can only be certain types. If it's fresh, if it's canned fruit, it can only be in water or light syrup. And even then, they prefer dried or fresh. So you can only have a
Okay.
certain
So it's
mix.
strictly snacks or concessions.
Right, that's strictly, and also just to tag on to your comment about Chartwells.
Yeah.
Chartwells, when you have a food management company, 90% of the time in the state of Connecticut, because there are very few districts that do not participate in the USDA meal program, Chartwells is providing that USDA meal program.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And just so you know, and I know that it's in this document, that over the last 14 years, it's provided us with over $111,000 through this program. So
Collectively, that's a lot,
Yeah.
but it's over 15 years.
Yeah, that's
So it's $5,000 a year, almost 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the total again?
over the last 14 years, not including if we had done it or chose to do it next year, it's 111,000, almost 112,000.
Thanks for the clarity. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, question. I'm sorry, Pam, you said that was about 20 cents. I mean, they're using meals, but 20 cents per meal or
It's 10,
student, if you
it's a
will?
maximum of 10 cents
10 cents.
per
Okay.
lunch served in the prior year. So what the money we got this year for Healthy Foods was based off the total number of lunches we served last year.
Do they count green reduced in that?
Yes,
They do.
yep,
Okay, that's
total
good.
lunches.
Good.
Are we still serving St. John's?
No.
That ended.
That ended.
Oh, okay,
That ended, I think, during COVID.
okay.
We have chosen because limited labor,
Mhm.
that it wasn't something that we could, offer them.
Yeah.
We couldn't offer them, the program.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
What is our sales from our snacks, from our vending
From the
machines?
vending machines,
What are we bringing in for sales?
I honestly, I don't have that information.
Cause I'd be curious what we were doing in sales prior to us joining this 14 years ago to versus what we're doing in sales now from our vending. Right, like, 'cause that's the only way to really compare if this is worth being in. Like, were we selling $15,000 worth of vending sales 15 years ago? And now we're selling $5,000, but we're getting 5,000, well, we're still -5. So we've lost 100,000.
Well, if you're looking strictly at dollars and profitability, or if you're comparing,
Well, when we're talking numbers, we're talking money, that's all we're talking about is profitability.
well, no, I think a part of it is really, we're actually talking about trying to provide, better opportunities for kids to make good choices. Yes, money is a part of it as
Well,
well.
if we're gonna sit here and talk about money, then money is the number. Are we losing $100,000 to gain healthier options? I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that to look at the whole picture, you have to know the whole picture.
Yeah, and I can tell you probably, there's no way we have the information from 15 years ago as to what our vending sales were. And I probably couldn't even tell you what was in the vending machines at that point in time. It would also probably be difficult because 15 years ago, our enrollment was significantly different.
Yeah.
So we have to take that into consideration. But I do see your point. If there's a way we could quantify that, is the healthy foods either making up for or adding what we would have lost in vending machine concessions? I don't know at any point in time that our vending machine concessions really were a profitable or a significant addition for profit, because even when we do have the vending machines, I do not believe that they can operate during meal service, because we can't have competition during that time. So it would have to be after school. So unfortunately, I would love to come back and be able to tell you I could get that information, but I don't think that we're gonna have it back.
Who manages the vending machines?
It's food services.
All right, so we should have a number of what we're doing in sales per year out of our vending machines, right?
Yes, I don't know if we have it back 15 years.
I wouldn't need it
I
15
may
years
have it
ago,
now.
but
I mean, I could have it pulled now, but I don't know if it would give us the comparative that you're looking for. I could just tell you what it is now.
right.
And we could sell like $200 through the vending machines, but we're getting, like this example, 5,000 back because it's based on sales on lunch.
Right. And even if we put more delicious things, perhaps less nutritious things, I don't know whether our vending machine sales would skyrocket based on the time that they're available.
Jane, your question?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out why we wouldn't want to continue with this program, because it sounds like, it's giving better options and it's not a significant source of revenue for the schools. I don't know why we wouldn't move ahead with this program. To me, it seems like it's a win-win. You're getting better offerings, healthier options for kids. And it's probably not, significant in terms of revenue. And I wouldn't think we would want to make the choice of, let's offer candy every day so we can make more money. And kids are you can bring M&Ms to school. That's not restricted, if that's what you choose to have for lunch. And I think, to be honest, I think most kids are drinking a lot of water, which is a great trend. That's certainly not what school was like when I went to school. And it's, I think it's a great thing, that's what when kids come over to my house, everybody wants water, that's a great thing. So.
I was gonna say, I think many years ago, the students were involved in speaking to the food staff and talking about what they liked, what they didn't like, so that they had input in terms of if there was a different type of food available. I don't know if that still happens. But that's a good opportunity.
I think potentially at that point in time, I don't know whether it's still continued at that point in time. I think it was part of the district health and wellness committee where they would work with food services. I don't know whether that's happened in recent years just because of the change in structure.
It's a good idea, because the kids are saying, I think there's a certain time they wanted more salads, so then they were like, okay. But they need their input, because if they're gonna eat, they might as well be able to talk about what's of interest to them.
Jane, you were next, and Kelly.
Yeah, just real quickly, I know that in 2009, the first time I came to serve lunch at the cafeteria for my kindergartner, they were serving pancakes with syrup and chocolate pudding. That was what was on the menu. Delicious. Yes, they sure did sign up for those lunches back then. And yeah, you know, a lot's changed. So just an interesting fact to share with everybody that, you know, we weren't necessarily in a great place before these programs.
So I think just to kind of keep us on topic, because I think there's two different items here, right, which I really appreciate. Pam was actually included in this, in the really tiny scope. We're not talking about school lunches, we're not talking about school breakfast, which I think potentially comes back as a different topic, because I think that there's also plans potentially around this topic and the program in general, that we might want to consider for future meetings. But for this one, just the clarity on the scope of this action certification was really, really helpful. So thank you.
Great. Seeing there's no other questions, we have a motion on the table to approve certification. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? So moved. Right, beverage exemption.
Okay, so this is the companion piece to this regarding, the same idea, but regarding the beverages. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, just pretty much the same thing where you vote and Trent, do you remember, did they have to have two separate votes?
We need two
For the healthy food, no, but for the healthy foods, within it, did they have to vote for the healthy foods and the exemption separately, or is it all together?
It's all
Okay,
together.
perfect.
So the language that will go into the minutes will be exactly the healthy food
The mem-
and the exemption
Okay.
language. in one
Okay.
sentence.
They're just very particular. All right, so it's basically the same idea, except they don't allow you under the healthy foods agreement and exemption to include beverages, so they make you have a separate vote. So same concept, just it also allows you to provide an exemption for beverages served at identified events.
Same guidelines as the foods.
Same guidelines, yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the beverage exemption as presented.
Second by Steve Mueller. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the beverage exemption? Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay, sir, 2024-25 school lunch prices.
Okay, so school lunch prices, after review of our program this year, we do recommend an increase in the prices. We have not done that, I believe, 2 years at this point. And we have run into a deficit, so proposed prices are on here. Pam, is there anything you'd like to add about this one?
Just I added to the proposal, just so you could see what the proposed prices were for last year, just as a benchmark. This is something that I had worked on with Jan before she had left. And she worked with some ideas on the spread for breakfast between the schools, and then a pretty consistent increase of 50 cents for lunch. So that is what we're looking at. And, you know, if there's questions afterwards, we can take care of those.
So, could you clarify,
We need a motion before we have discussion. Do we have a motion already?
No, I can certainly make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed 24-25 lunch prices as presented.
Second.
Second by Steve Mueller. Any further discussion? Steve?
Everything went up, but milk, or not milk.
When looking at milk is a la carte, so milk cannot be covered under free or reduced. So to accommodate those students who might qualify for free, I would love to say it's logical, but the federal program, there's subsidy for a free meal where you get milk, a reduced meal where you get milk. But if you bring your own food from home and you want to get milk, you have to pay the full price for milk. So keeping that in mind, we wanted to keep that flat if possible, so that for students who are bringing milk in, we did also compare it with what the unit price was. And the unit price for milk, because we have contract rates through the state for what that milk price was still, it wasn't going to be a loss if we left the price the same versus our meals, where the cost of all the components have been increasing.
So it makes it more accessible to.
Yes.
To students who might need.
Yes.
Brianne, go ahead.
Thanks. So I guess this is where I. So, this would be for the next academic year. How can we find out about, like, so this goes back to my question that I just asked erroneously with the last topic.
Yeah.
What are lunch prices for those school systems that are outsourcing? What are sales like for those individuals, for those school systems outsourcing? I appreciate this. This is great information and well presented, but it presumes that we should continue. I guess the act is the Healthy Hunger for Kids Act that binds us to serving a certain lunch. So, what can we find out about other options that are available to us and what that pricing would look like and what the sales would look like, right? Because we struggle with kids get them and they throw 90% of the lunch away, right?
Okay, so clarify for me, is your question, do we continue to participate in the USDA federal program? Is that your question?
That's one of my questions.
Okay, so if we were not to continue with that, I did look at our participation. So on a daily basis, we see 37% of our breakfast served are for free and reduced. So 30% of our meals served for breakfast, 44% of lunch is served. So looking at those numbers for a year, if we were based on March's participation in meals served per day, for that piece of it, for reimbursement, we would lose $155,000.
Yeah,
So that's
right. So they don't reimburse unless you go through
Nothing.
that program.
So you lose reimbursement for free and reduced.
Right.
You lose access to free commodities that we can, that the state has a stockpile of commodities. And we have rights to pieces of that. So your cheeses, different meats, veggies, things like that. We lose accessibility for supply chain funding, which we just recently received a $25,000 payment for supply chain funding. Any other state funding associated with meals, all of that goes away. Obviously, the healthy foods would go away. It wouldn't matter if we said we would participate in healthy foods, it has to piggyback off the USDA. So all of that funding would go away. We're already receiving that and losing money. Unfortunately, I don't know that we can project what the cost of bringing in a company versus doing it ourselves. And I don't think there's any way to clearly project what that meal utilization would be. I think even if they came in to give us a presentation, they'd have to base it off our current utilization. Because it's too much of an unknown as to are kids going to take or not take.
Right.
They're still gonna be under the same recipe constrictions. Unless, like you said, we don't do the meal plan at all.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that there's some data that we can collect from schools again who have gone to a vendor supplied meal plan as to was there an increase in sales, et cetera. So that, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in.
And were you considering a vendor supplied meal program outside of the federal program or within? Because they do both. And I don't know that, I think there's maybe a handful of districts in the state that don't participate in the federal program at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many of those would be a third party managed program.
Yeah, I don't know
And we
enough
can,
about it to answer that question.
Steve, you had a question?
Quick question. If we withdrew from the USDA program, students are still eligible for free and reduced?
No.
Okay, so that is offered by them. That's not something that we would then have to still provide free and reduced lunch and breakfast to the students at our own cost.
Right, but 40% of breakfast, right,
I get it. No.
Exactly what you're saying, yes. Yeah, we wouldn't have a mechanism for us to review that. I don't know, how we would look at that. Their review of being able to qualify whether someone's free and reduced, I can tell you 90% comes from direct certification, which we're allowed to have a link to the state that provides us that information where families are approved without an application. All of that would go away.
Jack?
I was wondering, like Amelia, do you two have any opinions? You're the ones having the breakfast and the lunches, you have more information, not just what you option to.
They may not be actually eating it, the option.
Well,
Okay, I get breakfast in the mornings sometimes because they have these really good muffins. Like they're chocolatey, sorry, you don't have to touch them. But they're oh my God, they like melt in your mouth, they're warm. They're great. And I get lunch occasionally. I got lunch today and yesterday, actually. It was fantastic. But I just don't want them to get more expensive because I'm draining my mother's bank account with these school lunches because I bring lunch to school every day. And obviously it's my own fault because I don't check the lunch menu before, but I bring lunch to school and then I come in and I see a good lunch. I'm like, oh, I want that. So I get it. So I'm gonna spend probably like $200 on my school lunches this year. And I'm bringing my own lunches to school. So as much as I know, like, you guys need to raise the prices because inflation and whatever, like, please don't, and like, and please don't get rid of free breakfast either, because that's like my breakfast, like that's what I eat in the mornings. And if it's not free, then I probably won't get it, because it's a good muffin, but it's not worth it.
I mean, I agree with Sam for the breakfast thing. Like sometimes in the morning, if I'm rushing and I don't have time to eat breakfast, like school breakfast is my breakfast. And I feel like if it wasn't free, I probably wouldn't get it. So I love that it's free, and I also understand that you might have to raise the prices, but from a student perspective, I really think all the students appreciate having a free breakfast.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification, the free breakfast is additional funding from the state, so that one at this point is not our option. We're not making up that price. They're giving us money to make that happen.
Is that gonna go away?
It depends on the legislature.
I'd cry. You could write a letter. I love
Right.
my, I will.
Right.
Right, the muffin.
Excuse me,
Right.
you're not reminding me of my muffin.
Right.
I will, but guys, I swear, literally the best muffin you'll ever have.
So you do
There you
believe
go.
that the increased price may have an effect on?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Eileen?
I was gonna just ask the student reps what you thought about the meal choices.
I think they're great. I like them.
I think it depends.
I mean, some of them aren't great, but I think the majority of them are good, and I like that they don't do anything with meat on Mondays because I don't know, I like vegetarian food, yeah, this Monday, I just like vegetarian food, and I think a lot of people do.
Right.
And I think it's good to have a day for that.
So that's what they do on Mondays.
Yeah,
My friends and I have a notes list where we rank all of the school lunches and we give them a rating, so we know which ones are worth buying, which ones aren't. Wow. No, we're. Feedback to the cafeteria, I mean, do they collect feedback from students? Well, I don't know, we don't want to be mean for lunch lady.
You know, but
Just they'd appreciate it.
Correct.
Repeat on the ones that.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
right?
we really like Rella sticks, but I also have this thing where like, we'll get mac and cheese, and I will go to the cooking room and get salt from chef, because it just needs a little more. But yeah, like, some of the lunches are really good, and some of them you'll look at them and you'll be like,
Not today.
maybe not. Maybe not.
Preparation for.
But they have lots of options, because they always have the lunch and the special, and they have salads, so that's really good.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you ever really don't.
My question goes to Meatless Monday.
Oh, I love it.
It's
It's great.
We had mozzarella sticks.
Okay, but what if I'm not a vegetarian and I'm a student there and I wanna eat meat on Monday?
Then you bring your own lunch on Monday.
But no, we cater to everybody, but now we're not catering to everybody, so that's where I have a problem with that. A serious, an actual, like, it's a legitimate. There are students who would wanna have meat on Monday, and just because somebody says we can't have, it's a meatless Monday, I don't agree with that.
I don't think that's a school thing. I think that's a government thing. The government tries to push meatless Mondays. Like, I think that's a thing, right?
I don't know.
Don't, yeah, I don't, that's.
I don't know that
Google the history. I'm happy because we get mozzarella
It just-
sticks.
They both start with an M, so it works.
Pam, yeah, I was gonna say, Pam, with this.
Yeah.
This does not, if we make a decision about increasing prices or not, this really has nothing to do with if we
The menu.
continue with the federal program or not, yes or no? At this point, if we said yes or no to this,
the
is that
pricing
effective?
that's presented before you today.
Yeah.
Is based off continuing to receive the subsidy for free reduced, and we do receive a subsidy for paid meals that we
Yeah.
claim each month.
Without that subsidy, could that mean that these prices would be higher?
The board would have to figure out how to cover the full expenses of the program if we were to lose that subsidy.
Okay.
So if the board chose that if we lost the $155,000, that they somehow wanted to add $155,000 to their budget to transfer into the food services program. But at that point, we're still looking at it not being profitable, so you would have to make up the subsidy. And then we would still have to, I understand, we want to move towards profitability, obviously, and there are things to look at moving forward with the program and what those options, particularly as we're in transition right now, what those options might be. Unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball to see forward to know what participation will be. I know the reason why 20 some odd years ago, we moved to in-house management of the food service program is because obviously you bring a third party in to manage your program, they need to have a profit. They need to have a reason to come in and do this. So I don't necessarily know that we can think that if that were to be an option, whether it's part of the federal program or not, whether that is going to make the cost of the meals less.
But the pricing won't affect the reimbursement, right? It's whether or not we comply with the program.
Right, and I should clarify, because that brought up a very good point. We are going to have to increase our prices a minimum because we are not fully funding the program. So we have to do a paid lunch equity calculation to the state. Based on that calculation, preliminarily, because they haven't put out the new spreadsheet yet, we will have to increase, I believe, by minimum of 5 cents. They allow us to gradually get to profitability, but we're so far outside of profitability right now, that we're trying to propose these increases to get us where we need to be, instead of they allow us to cap it a bit to get there slowly. But I think at this point, we're so far behind, we're gonna have to continually do that, and they're going to dictate to us. So there's going to have to be an increase this year. They're not going to let us leave it flat if we are to continue to participate in the program.
And I do want to add, for your benefit, that Meatless Monday refers to the main meal. Trent looked it up for us. There are other meat options on. for
You can
Sunday.
get grab and go grinders.
As long as they're, I mean, cause I do believe that's an equity issue.
You look really concerned.
No, I
No, we got it.
because there's
No,
no
there-
reason for us to be
yeah.
pushing a vegetarian or vegan on anybody, you know,
No,
it's
there's,
an option.
there are meat
but
options there.
there
It's just
shouldn't
not the
be.
main meal.
Okay.
It's an international campaign.
Yeah, let's do one question, Jim.
Yeah, so I totally agree with the healthiness of the offerings. I don't think that should be every offering, of course, but that's, maybe within the guidelines of the USDA. But it sounds like we have a choice between staying with the program and becoming slightly unprofitable, and not staying with the program and becoming grossly unprofitable. So are there any plans on the table to perhaps offer some choices that are within the guidelines, but still give the kids something that they would perhaps pay an extra quarter or an extra 50 cents for that, because it sounds like, based on the numbers that you provided us before this meeting, you know, there wasn't a great participation in the, I'm definitely gonna pay money for that. That's worth it, in my opinion, or my parents think it's worth it, over and above me bringing in a bologna sandwich.
We do have an option. I'm not sure if it's currently active. Trent might know a little bit more, but it's what's called, at the high school at least, alternative meal, which is a higher price, a higher paid price than the regular meal. And it still meets the guidelines, but whether it's a little more tasteful, you know, a little more enticing, you know, people might, want it a little bit more. All we have to do if we're participating in the USDA is it can be an upcharge for the paid students to have that meal, but we have to make it accessible, free and reduced for the same. So free would be free, even if it was the alternate, and reduced would be at the reduced price, even if it was the alternate. And so if we do choose to either keep that active or reactivate that, it is an option within the USDA program to have an alternate meal at a higher price, which might increase participation. But part of that is just agreeing that if you qualify for free or reduced, you don't get a surcharge for getting the alternate meal.
Okay, that seems counterintuitive, because, you know, if I'm getting a free lunch and let's say Joe and Kevin get a steak sandwich, then I get a steak sandwich for free.
I think because for equity and
Sure.
for excluding, you don't want to make it a very big part of the program is not to make it a visible difference.
Yeah.
You would not believe they actually tell you in your training, you can't have a separate line. You can't make them sit at a separate table. There are actually districts who do that. If you're free or reduced, or at least at one point in time, that's what they would do, which is why they have to tell us not to do that. You don't get a separate line. You don't get a separate colored tray. You don't, and if we withheld that from them, it would in essence be close to the same thing. That is like, oh, well, you're not getting the alternate. Oh, you must be free or reduced.
Okay, do you have any?
That's the reason. I think that's the reasoning behind it. I understand it's not necessarily intuitive.
Do you have any ballpark estimates as to, if, you know, if you're offering an alternative so that Richie Rich can get a steak sandwich, you know, how many of those are being paid for and how many are being accessed via the free and reduced lunch program? And I don't need the exact numbers.
No,
Just,
no,
have any-
based on the way.
On the
that-
alternate
based-
selection you mentioned.
Based on the way the meal is rung up,
Mhm.
we wouldn't know.
Okay.
Because as a student comes through, based on their, and even, just so you know, the people at the register don't even know the classification of the students. It's hard coded in the background. So they just know to ask for money or not to ask for money. So the meal is either rung up as free, reduced, or paid, and if it's paid, what that price is. It's coded in the system. If a reduced student comes through and gets the alternate meal, it still will only ring up at 40 cents.
Okay.
So because of that, it's not going to tell us that information.
Okay, and one more thing, is there any cash that takes place in these transactions, or they're all, everybody has their own card that has a
There's-
fund to it?
There's no money on a card per se. If a parent prepays and puts money on the account, it sits on the student's account. And so when the meals ring up, it says, you don't need to pay me anything, you don't need to pay me anything, they ran out of money, okay, you owe me $3.25. So the cashier doesn't know whether they're not asking you for money because you're free or reduced, or they're not asking you for money because you have a couple $100s on your account. So that keeps the anonymity.
So no currency is passing.
There are some students who can pay in line.
Mhm.
And that would be either they can pay and put money on their account, or they can pay for the meal that's in front of them. Or it's ahead of time, because a lot of times parents will go on RevTrak and just put money on their student's account. They'll send a check into the office and it gets bookkeeped into the account through the cafeteria off serving line because they're too busy serving.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're ready, for a vote.
Yeah, the motion's on the table.
Yep, same. All those in favor of this,
Raising.
motion carries. All those opposed?
Nay.
6 and 3.
I think, yeah, 6 and 3.
Any abstentions? So moved. Student reps, you're welcome to leave if you'd like to.
Okay.
Thank you for
Good
coming.
night, ladies.
Have a great night, guys. Great to see you again.
Hey, policy page 3, we have the first reading.
So policy, we met last week on Thursday night and actually, Chris to go through them with us because there's some of them are complicated. The discussion, on one of the policies that you'll see definitely was, brought to our attorneys, her opinion. So we were able to change something in there and that'll come up actually in the one in terms of use of private technology devices by students. But we'll start at the beginning.
Yes, and I did get some feedback regarding the student discipline policy as well, so I have some answers for that I can do.
Okay, sure.
Okay. All right, so, we will start with administration series 2000, retention and disposition of records and information. So this policy basically has been revised, regarding storing, transferring and disposing of records. We need to follow the Office of Public Records guidelines, and law regardless of if this is digitalized records or if it is paper records. Just so you know, we currently do not digitalize any of our records. So, if we were to do that, we would have to make sure that we were following those similar guidelines, but, that's the main piece. So if there's any questions regarding this, I'm happy to answer.
It's just a first reading. If anybody has any questions, this will come up the next meeting, for adoption. There's a regulation that actually goes with it, but we actually take a look at policy for adoption.
Okay, nobody has any questions. I'll move on to Series 3000 business, purchasing. So the changes to this policy, it focuses on the fact that there was an elimination of the need to have a public notice in a newspaper for proposals unless the law requires that. It clarifies that when choosing a vendor, that the board will make a provisional award subject to finalizing that contract. And that we need to comply with federal regulations for National Food Lunch Program at this point, if we continue with that. So those are the main pieces of that. I know that there's some dollar amounts in here that have been adjusted by the attorneys, but those dollar amounts actually align to our current dollar amounts because that's what aligns to our town charter. So there is not really a change for us in those. Any questions regarding this? Moving on then. The next policy is Series 4000 personnel. And this regulation, this policy, really, most of the policy remains the same. The only thing that's being added to the conversation is that it adds smartwatches and changes the vocabulary of TikTok to X because the name changed, Twitter to X because it's changed names. The regulation does talk about the prohibiting employees' use of AI in a way that violates any other school policies. But the main policy changes in here are very minor, just add smartwatches and TikTok. X. I don't have social media, so. I'm a little out of the loop with these.
I just have a question about, like, so in the third line, it says the blank Board of Education. Should that read Old Saybrook Board of Education?
Yes.
Like that's intended to be filled in? Okay,
All of those blanks that you see in the cleaned up version that you
Will have
put out will.
perfect. Good, thanks.
I
for
will
that
clean them up for you guys.
clarification. Good, thanks.
And anywhere where you see blank person will be the lead.
The appropriate, thank you.
Any questions regarding this policy? Good. Moving on, Series 5000 students, homeless children and youth. So this policy actually remains the same. The piece in here that is different falls under the regulation that ML students have access to, or multilingual students have access to special education or high level courses, and they're not limited in accessibility to either of those based on their language. Any questions at all about this? Okay. The next is the student discipline policy. So the main pieces in here that have been changed, and that we've discussed, the big piece here is that there's a push for consistent discipline as well as promoting strategies to teach and encourage positive student behavior. That's something that we do. This is now written into the policy. In addition to that, it does add some language about AI. So we discussed certain aspects of this, and as I said, I just got information back from the attorney before this meeting, so I'll add to that. So I just wanted to point out a couple pieces to this. On page. On page 6, number 10, talks about including, it talks about blackmail, threatening, intimidating. You can't, obviously students are prohibited from doing so. This adds the fact that they are not allowed to do it at all, but also they can't do it with AI. In addition to that, on page 20, or on page 9, number 29, I know there's another one, I'm gonna come back to that, but on page 20, or sorry, page 9, number 29, it talks about the fact that students are not allowed to tamper with any school computer system, so forth. And it adds in the fact that we cannot do that at all, but they also cannot do that with AI. So there was a question about if that was legally necessary to include. So the attorney did explain that we do not have to actually require it as, because it's not legally required. However, it doesn't preclude the district from being able to discipline a student with those behaviors, but having that language in there will provide a stronger argument if a student violates those behaviors using that particular service. So that was a question asked at our policy meeting, so I wanted to address what the attorney said. In addition to that, it also talks about AI with number 26, which this one, the policy committee felt very comfortable leaving, that talks about that students can't use AI without permission for the completion of assignments. Now that being added, we don't currently use AI in the schools because we do not have clear guidance yet about student data privacy in relation to this.
Do teachers have a means to distinguish though if it's been used?
It's very challenging. It is very.
Programs, I know that teachers can actually, they have programs that they found, they can actually input an assignment, and it will say if it's been AI generated. I don't know the effectiveness of some. As much as AI is developing, people on the other end are developing ways to check.
And I'm sure that means that AI continues to develop.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really complicated. So that really leaves a lot on the teachers to have to figure out new ways to be able to assess things that get around that. So any other questions about student discipline? Okay, moving on. Series 5000, student use of district computer systems and internet safety. So this one also adds the language of smartwatches into its description about the technology pieces. That is all that is changed in the policy piece, minus some very strong, like very slight changes of words from board to district. In the regulation, however, it does talk about, again, not using AI without authorization.
So just, with AI, so I know we target certain policies for student handbooks that students and parents have to sign off on. So how do we get all this AI information out to families? And I don't remember, in the middle school, I don't recall having handbooks in the middle school.
Oh, we have handbooks.
We do, okay, it's been a long time for me, okay, so. This is gonna be, and Joe, maybe you can help me with this, we're gonna highlight all this new AI policy language. How are we gonna address this with families and students?
Well, I can chime in with the high school. We've also, when we've sent out an update every year, we can encapsulate it and just do a cover page of what's new and changes in the policy. We've done that with significant ones in the past when there's been a dramatic change or something really brand new. AI is on the cutting edge, and I think a lot of schools are, struggling with how do I manage this? How do I deal with it? We actually have 2 students presenting to the staff at professional development as part of their capstone project at the end of end of the month. It's kind of exciting, but so that is one way we could highlight it. Also through our newsletters, over the summer as well to parents and families.
Okay, great.
And middle school would be similar.
Okay, so you do kind of bulletin highlight.
Yeah, so we meet with kids at the beginning of the year and point out things that might be new or important for them to know.
Okay, great. So, and parents as well.
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
because I know those handbooks are kind of cumbersome and we kind of just sign off and,
You do?
yeah, I do. I admit it. I know.
All right, any other questions regarding this policy?
Thank you.
All right. Series 5,000 students use of private technology devices by students. So, this one in the policy, it's been updated to also include smartwatches. One of the things that we did want to talk about here was on page 2, search of privately owned technological devices. And this was a request by a member on the policy committee to talk about who is going to actually check a student's privately owned device if a search is needed. So obviously a search is only conducted if there is just cause, if there is a reason why a search needs to be done. In that case, it was proposed to add by an administrator to make sure that teachers were not the ones doing that. That is typically how that happens in schools anyway, but it was requested to be put in the policy. And adding to that, that if in the case that a student's private technology is searched, that administration will attempt to notify the parent or guardian. So I did speak with the attorney. They felt that that was totally reasonable to add. So that's here. Yes.
Did you have the opportunity to have that conversation with them about what is our legality of being able to search somebody's private electronic device? I understand lockers, they're ours, we provide them to the student to use. But I still am, a legal search and seizure pops to my mind, and what, so that's my question, because like if I walk into a school and I have a phone on me, good luck with an administrator taking my phone, not that I have anything on it, but that's my phone, that's my property. And as if I was a student, I could see that, I would have that same reaction, like this is mine, this isn't anything in school. So what is our legality? How do we
I would say
do
it's
that?
very similar to if we needed to search a student's backpack or so forth. So it really comes down to the fact that we have a reason to believe that there is something that could cause harm to that child or to other children, or be a major disruption to the school environment. And I would say we use that very limited, really in situations where we feel like there could be a danger to that child or other children or adults even in the building. That being said, so a technology piece that could fall into if there was some kind of extreme behavior or student talking about causing harm to other people, or if we thought there was bullying happening and that child was being affected on the other side, those would be the kinds of things, but it couldn't be that, well, I'm mad at you and I'm annoyed that you were playing with your phone in class and show me your phone and I'm gonna go through everything that you went. That would not be an appropriate search of a piece of technology or anything for that matter.
Do we then share that information with the police if that, so again, that this is the broader question. I'm not trying to prevent anybody from,
You want to make sure that there's proper boundaries put in place.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
and with that, we don't violate somebody's.
Right, so if we were to find or to believe that there was like a situation where there was a danger, we may involve the police, or if we know that a law was broken, then we would involve the police at that point. But just because we are searching a backpack or a phone does not mean that we would necessarily be calling the police. Now, if I went through a backpack and found marijuana in the backpack, that might be a different story. We had a situation where a law was broken.
Yes, the one thing that's popping into my mind is, the photos. I'm assuming that that's gonna include being able to look through somebody's photos, which could be cause of part of the problem.
It could be. So I would say it's really focused in on what is the intent of the search. So what are you looking for? So if I'm looking for text messages, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to go through that student's entire album. So it would really have to relate to that, to the specific nature of what it is that we're looking for.
And, sorry, just follow up, like, most phones have a lockup. What do we have to, I mean, how do you force a student to unlock their phone for you?
Well, I guess technically, if they refuse to do so, there wouldn't, and just as if they refuse to do anything, I can't make a student do something. It could be a conversation with a family member. It could be, you know, a parent coming in to have to unlock that phone. There could be consequences for that child if they're refusing to follow adult directions in insubordination. So I will say, I don't know at the high school if that's happened, but I have not come across that at the middle school. Sure. Joe, have you ever come across a situation similar to that?
We've had some situations where, to be honest with you, if you've built strong relationships with the kids, I feel like 8 to 9 times out of 10, the kid will open their phone and you stand over their shoulder and you'll say, "Can you show me the text message?" We call home and try to partner with families as well. If it's a safety issue, you know, expediency and speed is involved in that. And there have been some cases where students refused, and obviously we call the superintendent of schools and we get advice. And there were some cases where we've asked police to step in because we thought it might be a safety issue for the building or a level of criminal. Very rare though. I'd say in my 10 years, maybe 1 or 2 times. But I've found, and probably Krista can echo this, our kids are usually pretty cooperative. And other kids too. The nice thing about this, with the text messages and the screenshots, we find that other kids come to us with it. And again, a lot of times it's out of concern. So again, I think it's the relationships and the partnering, and we can avoid that combative nature of you know, trying to force a search. We would never force a search.
I wanted to mention, I wanted to thank Steve because at the policy level, committee, he was the one that actually thought it was important to put language in there that to notify parents and guardians. So we're hearing it right now from Joe, but to have it in there, it's important.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the policy? Yes.
I have a question. It may be more appropriate, the last one, the student use of the district's computer system. My daughter's complaining occasionally about internet access, especially directly outside the building. Is it limited? Joe, do you know, is internet access limited for the kids?
Do you mean like
Like,
not the Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi.
Are you referring to the Wi-Fi that the building?
right, like the example is when she's has time in between a play and wants to do some homework right outside the building, or like tennis the other day, had a few minutes, wanted to do an assignment. If she walked away from the building like 20 feet, it cut off.
I think part of that might be the bill, and Joey, maybe Joe or Pam might know better, but the building itself, it's. I think the building structure actually stops some of the Wi-Fi from going through.
I think it does. Once you walk outside, I don't think we have the boost capability outside on the Wi-Fi, so you'd have to go to your data on the phone, I think, and vice versa. When you're in the school, you can't get a cell signal, so it kind of
working in a Chromebook, which doesn't have the data thing. I was just wondering, does the school or the district, are they the ones containing the Wi-Fi access, or is it just poor?
I just think it's that they don't have access points built into the exterior of the building.
correct.
Okay.
Most of them are interior. I'm not aware, actually. That's probably an IT question. But
Yeah.
my thinking is that most of the, Wi-Fi is contained within the building.
Okay.
Thank you. Great.
Good things to be brought up in facilities.
Yes, actually.
Am I on that?
I don't know, but they meet Thursday.
I am. Thank you.
I am as well.
Yeah.
Noted.
Okay, series 6,000 instruction, policy addressing enrollment in advanced courses or program and talent and curriculum. Again, this is focusing on making sure that we reduce any barriers for students who are multilingual, are learning English, to make sure that there is not any barrier that's preventing them from having access to those courses based on their language. This really aligns with our equity plan, goal of our strategic plan as well. Any questions regarding this?
I understand the access piece. So everybody has access to these more challenging courses. What about, how do we manage the performance, right? Like,
Well, that's part of our job, and actually, that's been most of the training that we've done, won't say this, but it's been a part of our training this year with the staff is how to create sheltered strategies and different ways to support students who are learning English as well as trying to learn the curriculum at the same time. So we've had outside consultants come in and work with us. We've done work within our buildings. We've done a lot of teacher to teacher work and collaboration on trying to put those strategies in place to be able to support those students. And it can range everywhere from having things translated to visuals to changing the level of the reading. There's a lot of different pieces.
and that's done individually for the student, not for the entire class.
Got it. Any other questions regarding this?
You don't normally have this many.
I know, you guys were giving me a challenge today. All right, last one, Series 6000 instruction policy for the equitable identification of gifted and talented students. This again fits into that same category, trying to make sure that we're providing equity and not creating any barriers for multilingual students to have access to gifted and talented identification. And again, just a reminder, we don't currently have any program. We do have to identify students, but we do not have to provide programming, and we differentiate within our classrooms for those students.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, I just, that the language of under provision of services is just bothersome. That provision of services for gifted and talented students by the board is discretionary. So I'm reading that as a parent going, really, I mean, so you really don't have to do anything, you don't really have to, as a parent, I would think my interpretation is you really don't have to do anything. Is my interpretation of that.
You mean for gifted and talented?
Yes, for gifted.
Well, technically, that's a legal piece of it. So what we do is differentiate what's in the classroom based on students' individual strengths and weaknesses. So it's much more tailored to the individual child rather than
Pull out, right, versus pull out.
No, wait, we don't do that. We touch upon that up here, I think somewhere about differentiation, I believe. I read that in here somewhere, did I not? Or I'm wondering, can we elaborate a little bit more? I'm just thinking if, again, if a parent who's not familiar with this reads that, just. And legally, we don't have to, but we do.
Yeah, and we can put something in there.
It just seems like we need to add a little meat to that.
Well, and is it, is in the future, is there an opportunity for us as a board to consider that as a means to distinguish our district to maybe include gifted and talented programming, right? Because we hear feedback from parents.
I think there's, that would be a much larger discussion, because there's a lot of research for pros and cons for that, and for both the students in the program as well as the other students. So I think that would be a much larger conversation, because there's a philosophical piece to that as
Yeah,
well.
and I'm not suggesting.
Yeah, no, I know.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting.
Clarifying the language.
Yeah.
That's a little bit.
Because we do more than, that's sort of saying, yeah, may or
Yeah,
may not.
and it does say the board can include specific details concerning the services provided.
So that's
So
a suggestion.
I can work on maybe some language to put in there for the second.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that it's also, sorry, it's not on you, but it also may be a question of whether it's the place within the policy to handle that discussion, or whether it is the policy is the policy, because that's basically
The law.
the law of it, and then we take other actions within district to describe what we do with gifted and talented students, and have an opportunity to maybe educate parents, or whoever might be an interested stakeholder on what that looks like. I just wonder if the policy is the mechanism to do that or not.
I would also say the definition of gifted and talented is broad.
Yes.
No, so
It's
absolutely, no, so that's,
But there's a test, right? They're tested out to determine if they fall into that category. Because everybody thinks their child is getting talented.
Yeah, so and there's actually, so that's a piece of it. There's some other options, and not every district does it the same way either.
Right.
You have to describe the arts, you know,
Yeah,
which is
right.
great.
Exactly.
I know, so, which is wonderful, but my whole point was, I thought you know, if I was just reading that as a parent who was as familiar with programming and differentiated instruction, that left me kind of full, but I thought you could just add a little bit, maybe just one more sentence, just to.
I think it's a valid point. I think that there probably is even a broader piece, for me anyway, there's probably a broader piece than just even adding a little flip in the policy where we need to do some education on what does that mean? If your child
I
tests,
agree.
then what are we doing within the classroom to support those students? What does that mean? I mean, like, because those kids are getting IEPs, how does that translate? What's the communication that happens year over year for those students? What could that potentially look like in the classroom for a student that tests as talented and gifted? I don't know that we explain that well yet, and that's why it was just the point that I was making, Karen, is like, it's probably more than just outside the class.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree.
So I'll draft a sentence or two that could be placed before this. It looks like there's, they even say that that's something that we could add in there.
Yeah, no, I agree a little bit.
And then you guys can take a look at it with the second grade and make any decisions there. Okay. Yes.
When is what grade is that? Is that fifth? Fourth, so it actually takes place at good.
Yes, it does. It used to take place at the
I
middle
know,
school.
yeah, that's why I was
It used
like,
to be at the middle school,
when
yes.
is that? I couldn't remember,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
And then, I do think that, not related to the policy, but separate, since we've discussed this. I think there is a great opportunity, to create a message, you know, what is the messaging for parents? I do feel like I've heard a lot of, there's a lot of parents out there with questions who would love to know more about what it means if your child tests, you know, for that. In addition to what options are available for the curriculum for kids who are, you know, see themselves on a fast track of, you know, academically challenging opportunities starting in middle school and 12th grade. I'm, you know, how this fits in with other school districts, I have no idea how this, I'm not talking about policy, but I do think from a messaging standpoint, I would love to have information to be able to answer questions from the community.
Yeah, I think you're right, because there is a perception in the community that nothing is done, right? That's the story sometimes that people, because of the, you know, the lack of a complete message about it.
Right. And even in my experiences, I, you know, I had two children that were 2 years apart that I feel like had very different curriculum opportunities compared to each other, you know, so I would love an opportunity to get a better understanding, as well as figure a way to communicate better with the community in ways that don't use such education speak. Because I get lost on some of those things with a lot of data that we talk about, and I respect what everybody in their different roles, whether it's curriculum, you know, and teaching and principals. But if we can craft something that speaks to people who don't have an educational background, that'd be great.
So are you suggesting this should be an agenda item in the future or a communication? I guess that's.
Yeah, so I'm really kind of looking more to Trevor for that, you know, so something that we can think about. I don't think this is something for the policy by any stretch.
Yeah, our agendas are pretty, you look at, yeah.
And maybe something that we wanna.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
have,
yes, I think, right,
Yeah, I'm thinking
it's a longer term.
we have quite a few things on our items until, so it might have to be a fall thing.
Yeah.
But yes, and I can talk with our director. Bring on to let him start thinking about that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. I think it's a long term.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a lot of pieces to that. But I think some of the research, some of the things that we're doing now, could be a part of that.
That's good.
Very good.
So.
Is that for the policies?
No.
The last one.
The bylaws, yes.
And so this is student representation, participation on the Board of Education. So we needed to sort of take a look at it in general. So we needed to change it to simple, the time frame when we have our meetings. And that they can stay for, they can leave in an hour. So that's the thing that we're, sharing with them, so they're more familiar. What I did was work with Trent and Joe. So on page 1, it really is much cleaner. It says that all students in grades 10 and 11 will be notified in January, the opportunity to become a student representative to the Board of Education for the following years. And then those that are interested will be invited to attend an information meeting regarding the roles and responsibilities of student reps, so they know ahead of time if it's something they're really interested in following through. Chris and I'll be meeting with some of those students tomorrow, and the reason the timeline is a little bit late because when we chatted with Trent, Jan was feeling as if she knew she wasn't going to be here, so she didn't want to necessarily start something. So this is just to make sure that students are aware of what it is to be a student rep. Important for them to consider is that not only for them to have a report, but also to have a vehicle by which they can communicate with the student body and bring back information. Just like tonight, we asked a question, and that's important for students to be able to feel like they can comment on it. They can also put an agenda item with the superintendent of school like on the agenda if there's something they want to mention. But we have an opportunity, take a look. I know that this is very sophisticated. They're doing a video. So Joe, the kids do a video.
Yeah, we found this kind of was an outgrowth of COVID when we went into COVID mode and became very successful. So it's just a 30-second to a minute video, basically stating why they want to be representative to the Board of Education and why they feel they deserve that. And those videos are then shared with the 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. That's sent out with the link for the voting. So they're able to kind of see what who each of the members are and what they stand for.
We also put in here, which wasn't as clear, was in the original bylaw, that students that are interested in becoming student representatives need to come to a Board of Education meeting just to see how it operates. So they get a sense of, is it something? So tonight, thanks to Trent for helping with that, we had a student come and get a sense if that person would continue or follow through or, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for Joe again. In one of the student representative pieces here, the policy says the student representatives will attempt to communicate with the entire student body once a month. Is there a process in place to facilitate that?
Great question. There is. So they are guests at Suprin. So they come to our group, the Superintendent Principals Advisory Council. Krista's actually going to be sitting in on one on Thursday. We meet twice a month, and there are about 25 to 30 students across all the grades. And there's actually like a kind of a question and answer. What's going on? Who's in this club? That's how they get their information, basically directly from the student body. So that's sort of an ongoing agenda item on Suprin.
Thank you.
So one comment and then one question. My recommendation would be the very first sentence, instead of saying since 1995, it could just say it's the policy of the Old Saybrook schools to encourage participation. So just a suggestion. And then my question is, so is it the intent that they just spend an hour? Because from time immemorial, they've been leaving at 8:30. And so now that time has changed because we only want them here for an hour because the start time was incorrect.
No, it's actually a good question because I thought that they were usually saying, an hour and a half.
Yeah, they always stay till 8:30, but the start time in here was incorrect. And so now so I noticed that it says 8 o'clock now and we released them tonight at 8 o'clock. So we've now changed our practice.
So thoughts and ideas, you should put 7, you're thinking put 7 to 8:30.
Does it have to have a time? Then?
Well, we have always, so we have always, it should be
a time so they
know, right?
Yeah, I think it seem to vary depending on exam schedules and things like that,
Right.
but I think there should be some guidance, certainly.
I would caution about making it too late only because they get up so early, and with I will say that I've seen in other districts that sometimes the kids just stay, our students just stay for their piece, they do the report and then they go. So our students stay longer than some other districts already. I would just caution about making them or having them be here too late when they have so many other people.
No, I totally get it. It's just that this is a change from what we've been, from the practice.
And sometimes it's based on the agenda too. I mean, you may want to listen to a presentation too. So, I mean,
An hours.
yeah, an hour is enough.
Everybody feel like an hour is reasonable?
I think it's pretty good, yeah.
I do.
Jane?
I almost don't, I don't know that we need to say that they may leave it, I mean, because that implies that they can't leave before 8, you know what I mean? I mean, I feel like, you know, why does it need to be time specific? I feel like it doesn't need to be in the policy, just say, you know, they come to the meetings and just say, or allowed to leave early based on their, you know, I don't know, but like, I don't know why you know, why, I mean, I feel like it needs to be what they need to do based on what their homework level is, their interest in the meeting, and I don't know.
I'd like to keep it at least an hour.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, I
there's
think
things that they can take advantage of
They may.
here.
yeah,
As a board function.
and it also allows them to know that they can leave before the meeting is over, right? It gives them permission that, look, we've said that stay till 8.
Yeah.
And then it's okay for you to leave even
That's
if we're
exactly
in
right.
conversation.
Right.
And so that way it's not.
Yeah.
They want to stay longer for something, they can stay longer if they want to. It's up to them.
And that's something that when we meet with students, you know, we'll be able to tell them. And
Yeah.
I know that the executive board meets with those students that are selected. So that's a conversation, you know, we don't want them to come and just give their report leave because then they're not privy to the kind of conversation that they, like, for instance, Jack, you asked a question, you know, and it came up, and if they leave, then there's no opportunity to relay it.
Jim?
Trevor, I'll just make a comment on that. I think it should probably say something to the effect of at the discretion of the board chairman or typically an hour, or maybe typically an hour in a prayer. If the impression is that we're trying to get across, okay, you're expected to stay for about an hour, but you know, it could be 55 minutes, could be an hour 15, depending on what the agenda is asking them to address.
Good point.
You know, if you say, oh, you guys have exams, you can leave in a half an hour. But up to the discretion of somebody in charge would probably be more appropriate.
Yes, like if they had exams, that would give the chair the option to say, right? Yeah.
I mean, we know it's not always gonna be an hour, but you know, that's the expected.
Sometimes I'll check in with them when I first get here too. If I see them here, I'll talk to them for a second. If they say, we have exams tomorrow.
So could we do maybe, you know, may leave at 8 or earlier at the chair discretion?
Yeah.
That work?
I think that's fine.
It's fine.
And that addresses if they have exams tomorrow.
Perfect.
That works. Okay, that was a lot to get through.
It was. There's a lot of policy.
Last item there, so this will be on the next agenda.
Just remember that there are qualifications, there's no grade point average, just the CISC standards, which is the state.
So before we adjourn this evening, just a few items about reminders coming up. There's a bunch of fundraisers and items coming up, so. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Before we do, can we acknowledge, I at least want to acknowledge the national recognition for music education support, the email that we got.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
I just, Mr. Taylor, the students, everybody, you know, short exposure myself, I have been nothing but incredibly impressed with the program, and I think it should be recognized here at the board, just the work that those teachers do, the students do, and just how just fantastic it is. We make the comment here. It says,
Can that get into the newspaper somehow?
when they engage in music making, our students contribute to a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts, and that really is what I've seen on a regular basis, so.
I'm sure Joe's gonna mention that in his report next week too, or next meeting.
Sorry, I didn't mean
Not
that.
next week.
No, it's remarkable and it comes year after year after year and our, you know, it's just wonderful. Anyone who's seen the performances and what our kids do for such a small district, it's amazing.
Great.
Great, that's a great honor.
Thank you, Jack. Go ahead.
Before making a motion to adjourn, can I just ask a general question? This harkens back to the discussion we were having a little bit earlier, and I should have brought up that, about the gifted and talented. Kristen, your experience as interim superintendent at least,
No, I don't need some explanation.
what jurisdiction, may I say, does that fall under? Is that, under Mrs. Smalley's or Carrie's umbrella?
It's kind
Where
of,
the determination's made there?
well,
Superintendent.
yeah, if there is a program, I would say that would be a superintendent decision. But with the guidance from the programming would fall under curriculum and instruction. But there is an IUP piece to that that would fall under Sarah. So it would probably be kind of a overlapping situation there.
Great answer.
Okay, so everybody.
Awesome.
Make a motion.
Call meeting.
Okay, Steve, second by Eileen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.